I need to tell you what happened to me at my job and how one word I changed on a resignation letter brought down a corrupt boss and transformed an entire company. This is about standing up when someone with power tries to erase you and discovering that sometimes the smallest details can create the biggest changes. My name is Tania. I'm 35, single, and I've spent the last decade climbing from junior analyst to financial operations manager, managing multi-million-dollar portfolios. I'm not a risk taker by nature. I plan everything, color code my calendar, read every contract twice. My father ran a small accounting firm, and he taught me that the smallest clause can change the whole outcome. I lived by that principle, and it's what saved my career. The trouble started when Nathan Cole transferred in from the East Coast. Tall, charismatic, ruthless, the kind of man who made deals with handshakes and threats wrapped in smiles. At first, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. New bosses always shake things up. But within 3 months, things weren't adding up. It started small. A bonus report with unauthorized figures. An expense claim from a vendor I didn't recognize. When I cross-checked old records, I realized numbers had been manipulated. I brought it up carefully once. These transfers don't align with our policy. I think we should flag them. Nathan didn't even look up from his laptop. Not your concern, just process them. I didn't argue. Instead, I started documenting everything. Emails, screenshots, printed reports, every discrepancy, every shady approval. People like Nathan count on you being too scared or compliant to stand your ground. Then came my performance review. After 8 years of exceeding expectations, suddenly I was labeled difficult and lacking team spirit. I knew exactly where this was heading. He was setting me up to fail. The ultimatum came 2 weeks later. It's a surprise meeting with no agenda. No HR present, just Nathan, a resignation letter, and a threat that cracked through the conference room like a gunshot. Sign this or I'll ruin your career. He didn't just push the letter toward me. He slammed it down hard enough that the glass tabletop trembled, his fingers pressing against the paper's edge as if daring me to refuse. I stared at the typed words. Voluntary resignation, effective immediately. The walls seemed to shrink around me as Nathan's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. Be smart, Tania. You won't find work in this industry again if you cross me. I forced my face blank, even as memories hit me. Late nights perfecting reports he took credit for. Ideas stolen in boardrooms while he smirked like a king. And last week's discovery, discrepancies in client invoices. Numbers that didn't make sense, numbers Nathan didn't want me looking at. I should have been scared. Maybe I was a little. But something sharper stirred inside me. Because Nathan didn't know I'd been preparing for this moment for weeks, I lifted the pen slowly, heart pounding, and signed. But not before I made one critical change. I crossed out voluntary and wrote forced resignation under duress legal language I'd learned from weeks of reading. Employment law cases after work. One phrase that could turn a resignation into a potential wrongful termination claim. When Nathan snatched the paper, his grin said he thought he'd won. I stood, met his eyes, and said quietly, I'll have my copy, please. His grin flickered. HR will follow up, he said, waving me off like I was nothing. I nodded because tomorrow HR would follow up. And Nathan Cole was about to learn what happens when you threaten someone who knows exactly how much power a single word can hold. I left without looking back. Nathan was already typing on his phone, probably messaging HR to finalize my exit. I walked calmly to my office, gathered my things, and placed a neatly labeled envelope on my desk containing everything I'd collected over 2 months, records of altered transactions. Emails where Nathan ordered me to process questionable items. Copies of expense reports with inflated vendor payments. Screenshots of system changes traced to Nathan's login. And my edited resignation letter. My phone buzzed with a message from Harper. My friend in legal at our company's retained employment law firm. You did it. Yes, I'm coming now, I replied. Harper had been the one who told me exactly what phrase to insert in that letter. Unlike most corporate attorneys, she had a soft spot for employees steamrolled by toxic management. I met her at a small cafe, too. Blocks from the office. She took one look at me, her sharp blue eyes scanning my expression. "You kept calm." I nodded, and she smiled with satisfaction. "Good. That's half the battle. The next half is letting HR walk straight into their own trap." Handed her the envelope. She leafed through it silently, raising an eyebrow once. "Vendor kickbacks. Looks like it," I said quietly. "Same to vendors, repeatedly." Both started showing up after Nathan arrived. Harper set the documents down and met my eyes. "Tania, this isn't just wrongful dismissal. This holds up. It's procurement fraud, corporate liability, potential federal investigation. That's why I have copies, backups, and timestamps on everything." She exhaled, nodding. "I'll forward this to their internal legal team tomorrow morning after HR processes your paperwork. The moment they realize what you've done, they'll panic." Next morning, I walked into HR at exactly 9 a.m., holding my boxed belongings. Tina, the HR manager, gave me a rehearsed smile. "Tania, thank you for coming. We'll finalize your paperwork and escort you out. I'll need a signed copy of the resignation acknowledgement for my records." I said politely. She hesitated. "We'll send digital confirmation. I'll wait. That's company policy, isn't it?" She stepped into the HR director's office. 30 seconds later, she reappeared, her expression tighter. "The director would like to speak with you." Mark Davidson, head of HR, stood behind his desk with my resignation letter. My handwritten edit staring back at him. "Tania, what is this?" I met his gaze without flinching. "It's exactly what happened. I signed under threat in a closed-door meeting with no HR present, and I've documented everything." After a moment of silence, Mark cleared his throat. "Well, need to review this before finalizing any paperwork? I'll wait for your response. My attorney will, too." As I stepped into the hallway, I saw Nathan by the elevators, laughing with another executive, still thinking he'd won. I walked past without acknowledging him, because tomorrow HR would summon him. And Nathan Cole was about to learn that the smallest word on a page could unravel everything he'd built on intimidation. The call came the next morning at 8:12 a.m. Mark's voice sounded stiffer than usual. "We've reviewed your document. We need you to come in for a formal discussion regarding your resignation and certain concerns that have been raised. Will my legal representative be welcome?" A pause. "Yes, that would be advisable." Harper and I arrived just before 9 o'clock. The usual relaxed morning chatter was gone. People moved briskly, heads down. Doors closed too quickly when we passed. The atmosphere had shifted. In the conference room, Mark sat with Tina and Pascal Green, the company's internal counsel, a man I'd only seen at company-wide meetings. "We've reviewed the resignation letter and circumstances surrounding it," Mark began formally. "We're concerned about the language you included and the allegations you've submitted." "I documented everything, Mark. I didn't want it to come to this, but Nathan gave me no choice," Pascal interjected. "We've begun reviewing the financial discrepancies you highlighted. If accurate and preliminary checks suggest they may be, this extends beyond employment law. There could be significant compliance violations and legal exposure for the company." Harper leaned forward. "I'm glad you recognize the seriousness. My client's priority is ensuring accountability. We expect immediate steps to address this, starting with Mr. Cole's actions." Mark nodded tightly. "Mr. Cole has been called in for a meeting this morning." My heart gave a quiet thud. It was happening an hour later. I watched through glass walls as Nathan strode across the floor, flanked by Tina and Mark. He looked irritated, not nervous, not yet. To him, this was just another performance review, another fire he'd charm or threaten his way out of, but I noticed something different. People weren't smiling at him this morning. Oh, greetings, no casual waves. They looked away. They disappeared into the glass conference room. I watched Mark slide a folder across the table. Nathan picked it up, glanced at it, and his expression shifted. The slight smirk faltered. He said something, I couldn't hear it, but Mark shook his head. Pascal leaned in, pointing to documents inside the folder. Nathan's shoulders straightened defensively. His mouth tightened. Harper whispered, "And there it is." Nathan's eyes lifted and locked on me through the glass. For the first time since he'd arrived, I saw it. Not irritation, not arrogance, fear in that exact moment. I knew Nathan Cole's grip on this company, and my career had just slipped by noon. Harper and I were called back to HR. Nathan wasn't there, but tension crackled in the air. "We've placed Mr. Cole on administrative leave effective immediately, pending a full investigation." Mark announced. Pascal added, "He's been relieved of all duties, access revoked, and instructed not to contact employees. We're bringing in an independent auditing firm to review the vendor transactions. We'll cooperate fully," I said evenly. "I assume the investigation will include interviews with other employees." "Yes, we've already had 2 staff members come forward this morning regarding similar experiences with Mr. Cole. This wasn't just about me anymore. It never had been." That afternoon, something unexpected happened. Colleagues stopped by my workstation. No grand gestures, just small comments. "Good on you, Tania. If you ever need backup. Wish I'd said something sooner." Even Theo, a junior analyst who'd always kept his head down, dropped off coffee and whispered, "Thanks for standing up." It hit me harder than expected. For months, I'd felt isolated, like I was imagining patterns, but they saw it too. Nathan's control hadn't just cracked, it had shattered. By Friday, rumors swirled. Nathan had been escorted from the building after trying to access restricted files. An emergency audit team set up shop on the 10th floor. Vendor contracts he'd pushed through were frozen for review. More employees spoke up, both men and women. Stories surfaced of manipulated reports, inappropriate comments, threatened careers. Each testimony chipped away at the wall Nathan built around himself. The following week was back-to-back interviews with auditors, compliance officers, and HR representatives. I told the truth, every detail. No exaggeration, just facts. Every piece of evidence I documented matched. Every timeline aligned. The deeper they dug, the worse it looked for Nathan. Late Friday, Harper messaged preliminary findings. "Nathan's facing potential charges. You good?" I stared at the screen, unsure what I felt. Pride, satisfaction maybe, but mostly a quiet sense of rightness. "I'm good, thank you," I typed back. "Thank you. You didn't just protect yourself. You changed. Something bigger." Harper was right. This wasn't about revenge. It was about refusing to be another silent casualty. By Monday, Nathan's name had vanished from the company directory. His office stood empty, blinds drawn, nameplate removed. No announcement was made, but in corporate environments, silence speaks volumes. The independent audit uncovered the depth of Nathan's scheme. Inflated vendor contracts linked to his former business partners, falsified approval chains, altered performance metrics. Over $750,000 in suspicious transactions traced directly to his oversight. Worse, email correspondence implied certain senior managers had either ignored irregularities or actively looked the other way. Thursday brought a leadership meeting. Time as a key participant, not a target. Aubrey Carter, the CEO herself, sat at the conference table's head, sharp, with quiet authority and eyes that missed nothing. "Tania, your documentation was not only accurate, it was critical in uncovering systemic failures within our procurement oversight," she began. "We recognize the impact this has had on you personally and professionally, and we intend to make it right. This wasn't courtesy, it was damage control. We'd like to offer formal reinstatement to your previous role with retroactive pay and public acknowledgement of your contributions to this company's integrity." I met her gaze evenly. "What about the others?" "I'm sorry." The other employees Nathan targeted who came forward. What happens to them? Pascal cleared his throat. We're reviewing each case individually. No retaliatory action will be taken against any employee who cooperated. I wasn't satisfied. What changes will prevent this from happening again? Aubrey leaned back. We're restructuring the compliance department and implementing mandatory ethics. Training for management. Anonymous reporting channels are being established with independent committee oversight. Harper leaned forward and Tania's role. Aubrey gave a calculated smile. We'd like Tania to lead the new compliance integrity program, reporting directly to me. The room fell silent. This wasn't the victory I'd imagined. It was bigger, not just reclaiming my job, but shaping the system that had nearly destroyed me. I'll accept with one condition, I said slowly. Aubrey's eyebrows lifted. Name it. Every person who came forward gets the same protection I did. No exceptions, no quiet demotions. And this company issues a formal statement not to praise me, but to acknowledge that silence enabled this to happen. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then Aubrey gave a slow nod. Agreed. 2 weeks later, the official announcement went out. Company implements new compliance integrity program led by Tania Grant, head of corporate integrity. A sanitized press release full of words like transparency and accountability. But between the lines, everyone knew the truth. Nathan wasn't coming back. And the culture that had quietly enabled people like him wasn't coming back either. My first act was holding open-door sessions for every employee who wanted to speak. No management present, no notes taken. Just listening. They came from junior analysts to longtime project managers. Some shared minor grievances, others real fears they'd buried for years. A few simply said, "Thank you." By week's end, I'd spoken to over 50 people. Some left lighter than they'd entered, others left with my promise. This won't be ignored. Stepping into this role didn't feel like vindication. It felt like responsibility. Nathan's story didn't end quietly. Investigation revealed his financial manipulation stretched back to his previous company. Charges were filed. Its name hit industry. Headlines not as a rising star, but as a cautionary tale. I never heard from him again. Some battles are won not by destroying your opponent, but by refusing to let them destroy you. 3 months later, Aubrey called me into her office. She closed the door, rare for a CEO, and motioned for me to sit. I wanted to thank you again, not just for standing your ground, but for challenging us to be better. I didn't do it alone. She smiled faintly. That's what makes it matter. She paused. We're considering rolling out the compliance integrity program company-wide, including overseas branches. I want you to lead that expansion. That wasn't just a promotion. It was seismic shift. I need time to think, I said honestly. Of course. I stood to leave, but stopped at the door. Aubrey, people don't speak up because they're afraid nothing will change. Or worse, that speaking up will make them a target. She met my eyes. I know. Let's prove them wrong. Her smile softened. Let's. That night, walking home through city streets with cool air on my face, I thought about that first confrontation with Nathan. How small I'd felt, how alone, and how different this felt now. Standing up didn't ruin me. It didn't end my career. It reshaped it. This wasn't a story about revenge. It was about reclaiming space people tried to push me out of. About showing others that silence isn't the only option. About knowing the difference between walking away and standing your ground when it matters most. My father was right. The smallest details change the biggest outcomes. One word on a resignation letter. One choice to speak up. One refusal to stay silent. Those choices didn't just change my career. They changed the culture around me. 6 months later, I received an email that stopped me cold. It was from Sarah, a woman at Nathan's previous company who'd read about the case in industry news. She thanked me for speaking up. explaining that she'd endured similar treatment but had stayed silent, eventually leaving the industry entirely. Seeing what you did, she wrote, made me realize I wasn't crazy. I wasn't weak. I just didn't know. I had options. Her message reminded me why this mattered beyond my own situation. Every person who finds their voice makes it easier for the next person to find theirs. The ripple effect isn't just about changing one workplace. It's about shifting an entire industry's tolerance for toxic behavior. Today, when someone approaches me about a difficult situation with their boss, I don't just offer advice. I remind them of something fundamental. Documentation is power. Truth is a weapon. And sometimes the most radical act is simply refusing to disappear quietly. Power doesn't belong to those who threaten you. It belongs to those who refuse to be threatened at. Sometimes the smallest action creates a ripple no one sees coming. And sometimes that ripple becomes a wave.